How do I look?
You look beautiful.
How about my girls?
They're fine.
Like,
We're not got all of them though.
Tell me
Okay, we're ready to go.
We're at the home of Ralph Peters today. My name is Lynn Carell, and we'll be talking about Ralph's experience during World War II. We're at 601 East Avenue A, and general information. Ralph was born in 1922 to William Peters and Blanche Axeline Fay. That's yours. And we're going to start with the hallmark, which would be Pearl Harbor. And where were you at that time when Pearl Harbor was hit by the Japanese?
well, I was in Moscow, Idaho at the university, and of course it was Sunday, and of course I had to have a shower on Sunday. So I was taking the shower, and pretty quick somebody come roaring up from downstairs saying that Pearl Harbor is being bombed, and we didn't know. We had one of the fellows in the house was had German background, and of course he had given us pretty near everything that was going on in the war in Germany, because he was kind of a little bit on the backside of the Germans, and wasn't too popular in our group. But he was one of the ones that came up, and he says, well, this is the starting. And he says, and it's going to go, and it's going to go all over the Pacific. Well, we said, no, I can't do that. We're too big outfit. We'll have them shut off right away. Well, everybody knows what happened. It just kept coming and coming. And it took us almost a year before we were able to start fighting back.
Did you enlist then? Right away?
I enlisted about 3 months after the December 7th attack, and I did it in Washington. And one thing after the war, Washington was giving $1,000 to all those who had enlisted in Washington, but I never got over there to collect anything.
What branch did you enlist in then?
I enlisted in the Army Air Force, and it was had to be in January or February of '42, and I wasn't called in until June of '42 before I was sent to California to start my training and being locked up for 6 weeks to make sure that I didn't have too many diseases of the wrong kind. So that's where we really got started in there. Then when they had us all lined up and all the papers made out for each one of us, cricket, the group that I was with, they called out everybody but me, and I couldn't figure out, well, what the heck's going on here? All these boys that I've kind of got acquainted with, they're all going to be starting in the next program, which is the training, and here I am sitting out here all by myself. Well, but when you finally find out what happens is when you take paper out of a file, you take it out this way. Well, there was one that had Ralph Peters' name on it, slid down underneath, and was laying in the bottom of the drawer. So that didn't show up for a month. So I was into a whole different group when I finally, they finally found the papers on me. So I don't think that made too much difference. But happened to me after that, because all that training was set up at 3 different places that we went to. After we left the place in Southern California, we went to Bakersfield, and that was just for a short stay. And of course, that happened to be along about August, and Bakersfield in August isn't the best place in the world to be, especially when you're out on the tarmac in a tent. And the ones that were training there, the airplanes were so hot that they couldn't even fly them in the afternoon because they couldn't get in. So that was one of my first experiences with what flying was going to be like. Well, I wound up in a basic training in oh heck. It was in Southern California, and it was we were being taught in steermans, and that's the biplanes, and we had to put in so many hours, and I can't remember what they were, but about 60 or 80 hours before we went to the next one. Well, the experience in the biplanes was that you had to learn how to land an airplane, and the after I seemed like I could be on my own in solo. I think I had about 10 or 12 hours at that point in time. They sent me out on a solo flight, and I came in and I ground looped the airplane. And what happens is us fellas that were from the city, you know, we're always looking right at the road when we're driving down the road. Well, all these farm boys, they know better than that. If you want to keep things lined up, you got to get things lined up, 2 things, one here and one way out there, so you're always going in the same direction. Well, I was looking at the right down in front of the airplane, and of course the thing made a loop. It really didn't hurt much. It was they said it was a 35-cent accident. So, but I learned how to land an airplane after that.
And that was a Stearman biplane, is that?
Yes. And it was a lot of fun because it was an acrobat airplane, and you could do all the different spins and rolls and all that sort of thing in, and fly it upside down. I love to fly that airplane upside down.
Did they just train you on just the one plane?
Well, just in this particular group, yeah. We got a couple more different kinds of airplanes before we get going. But the Stearmans are the ones that after the war you saw them all over the place, mostly for spraying spraying the crops with the different sprays that they have to have. That's where you saw a lot of them. A lot of them were not destroyed. There were certain planes that after the war were destroyed because they were too complicated for the general public to take over. And I mean, this is after we get through the other end. But I love that upside down airplane. The only trouble is, you had a suit that you, what do you call it, just coverall?
Jumpsuit.
Yeah, a jumpsuit. And there, all the pockets have got zippers on them. And so when you get in the airplane, you be sure and run the zippers up. And if you don't, and you get upside down, all the money falls out of your pockets and the pens and everything else. And I think I fixed up like 2 or 3 orange orchards with money and pens because I forgot to zip my pockets up.
On the Stearman bike, wasn't there a hood on it?
Oh no, you're sitting out open.
Okay.
There's a windshield there, and there was no electronics between you and the instructor. It was a thing with a hose from my ears back to his voice, and that's the way the communications were. Other than that, it was the stick that you flew the airplane. If you get out of line too much, he'd grab that stick and just whop it back and forth, and that'd get you on both legs, and that would wake you up and tell you what you're supposed to be doing. That was the communications then. We only saw one thing that came off supposed to be in an accident, and they were checking a fella out, and he got her rolled over on its back, and then he wanted to pull it out just in a half circle. Well, he was too close to the ground. He should have rolled it over sideways instead of trying to make a circle out of it. And that thing came so close to the runway that, and between that and a barn, that when they finally got it started, the instructor got out and he says, "I'm going to quit this job."
That's good.
Because the kid got a hold of that stick and he wouldn't let go of it. And that just about polished that one off. Then we went to Chico, California, and that was what they call BTs, Basic Training Aircraft. It was a single engine, single wing plane, but it had a lot more of the equipment that you had to get used to. One of the things that everybody had problems with is when they got in that airplane, and then you had to talk in a mic and talk to the tower on your takeoffs and landings and all that sort of thing. Scared us all to death. We didn't know what to do with that thing. So there was a lot of bubbles come out over the talking to the tower and stuff, and then talking to each other. And then there was a lot of conversation that was going on between some of the instructors and maybe the fellow that's running the outfit. When he sees somebody that's gotten out of line, he reports him into the tower, gives the number of the plane, and then whoever was goofing off, like you weren't supposed to fly in any clouds because you get 2 airplanes in a cloud, you got a problem. And so if you got caught doing that, then you had to do, you got a treatment like an hour and a half out on a tarmac, that's the parking area, which is nice and hot, with a parachute on, and you had to walk for an hour and a half. When you got through there, the sweat was running right out of your boots.
Did you parachute?
No, I'm talking about,
But that was just a punishment.
this is punishment on the ground.
Okay.
It's not,
You didn't have to learn how to jump from planes.
no, we didn't do that. No, all we had to do is know how to pull the cord if we had to. We had one fellow that he was coming on the downwind lake, Now, when I say the downwind leg, that's the one that's parallel to the runway, but it's in the opposite direction. And you went down on the downwind leg so that you got lined up to turn and make the landing. And this one, the instructor or something was helping him out, only they were getting ready for the landing, and he decides to unfasten his seat belt. Well, he wasn't doing things quite right, and the instructor popped that stick and flipped the plane and flipped him right out out of the seat and into the air. And that guy used his parachute, but he was the only one I knew that did.
Where did you go after your training then?
Well, we didn't get through training there. Then we went to Sacramento, and that was advanced training. And this is where we got into the twin engine planes. And we had about 3 types of those. And one of those planes was an AT-10, and that was designation as that particular airplane. And it was made by Curtiss. And when you were sitting in the cockpit, you could look out the window on your left side there, and there was a space maybe 3 feet, and there's the engine, and you can't see any wing. And that thing took off at 90, flew at 90, and landed at 90. It was the craziest thing you ever ran into, and it had a glide angle of a brick. So you had to be running that thing with the throttle all the time. And that was one of the planes that they decided that they shouldn't let the general public get hold of, because you had to know what to do with that plane. In fact, the first accident that I saw of it was right after we'd graduated and we'd been getting our wings, and we were all standing there alongside the runway getting all dressed up, and they picked out a couple of fellas to keep them there to be instructors. Well, they got me into one of these AT-10s, and they were taking off, and we were standing there looking. I guess you better shut her down.
Let's stop for a go.
Now resuming the interview with Ralph Peters. The date is October the 13th, 2008, part 2.
October the 18th.
October the 13th today.
Oh,
And I was wondering, you've gone through many trainings now. When exactly did you get your wings then?
well, my wings I finally got in February of 1943.
Okay.
And then I was stationed at Mather Field at Sacramento. So I really went from Stockton to what did I say, Sacramento. Okay, that's where they taught me how to fly B-25s. I started there, and when I should mention the fact that Blanche and Mother and Dad were there for my graduation. I also became engaged to Blanche at that period of time too. Bought her her ring down there. I think it cost me $300. Boy, that was a lot of money then. So they went on down, did their business, and I wound up starting to learn how to fly B-25. And the B-25, of course, was a twin-engine airplane with twin vertical rudders in the back. But the thing that was the worst thing about that airplane was trying to drive it around on the ground. It had, you remember the brakes you got in your bicycle that had all the little pads in it, and the way they worked, they pushed them together and they were set in oil, and that's the same brakes they had on that airplane. And of course, you had a brake for each wheel. So you had to get your feet in organized so that you weren't pushing the wrong one. And it was really a tough thing to learn how to taxi that airplane. But as soon as we got through taxiing that, then things got busy. And I don't remember how many hours I put in there, but they thought we were well enough along that they sent us to Greenville, South Carolina, and that's where we made up the groups where there would be a pilot and a co-pilot set up to learn how to start doing all the maneuvers and everything that you have to do for dropping bombs and how to shoot those. That airplane had, one of the last ones I flew had, the pilot could fire 14 50 caliber machine guns from the seat. And that's a lot of lead going out there. But also I was trained down in in Florida to drop what are those ones that run through the water?
Oh, a skip bombing?
No, not a skip bomber.
Oh, a torpedo?
Torpedoes. And those things were so big that they wouldn't even go inside the bomb bay. They hung outside the bomb bay, and the bomb bay doors kind of helped hold them in. But you had to know how close, how far out there you want to be from the target. And then, of course, in this case, with torpedoes, they're going to be a ship of some kind. And you had to figure that about 1,500 yards before you dropped that thing. And you know that fellow over there on that boat, he's shooting back at you. And you had to be at a pretty low level to drop those things. I didn't think that was a very good way to run a railroad. But I had that training. And then we went to skip bombing, and we became a skip bombing outfit. And all of our flights were probably, well, if we were going to target, we'd fly at maybe 2,000 or 3,000 feet. But when we went in on the target, we were always up under 300 feet. And that's where you got into too many problems. I think we sunk 3 ships while I was out there. One of them was a Japanese sub-chaser. And of course it had all those big bomb setups on the back end or rolled off on the subs. And when we came in on that, when there was, I think there were 3 of us in that group. But anyway, when we came in and we were, don't know whether it was the one ahead of us or whether it was us, but we hit those bombs that they had on the back of that ship, and it blew that boat clean in the air. And the last thing I saw when we went over it was a board that looked like it was about 12 feet long and about 4 foot thick one way, or 4 inches thick one way and a foot the other way, and I knew it was going to take the wing off that airplane. That's the kind of things you got into trouble on. And of course, the weather out there was something else.
You were flying out of South Carolina at this point?
Oh, hell no, this is clear up in the Aleutian Islands.
Oh, okay. We are now.
This is the fighting war.
Okay. You're now in the Aleutians. Oh.
Yeah. No, in Greenville, South Carolina, it was just training. And we left there I think in October of '43. And then they got us all together, you know, and they said, well, we're not supposed to tell you where you're going, but they gave us all injections that would indicate that we were going to go to India. I've been shot for every bug that they've got in India, and they turn around and send me to Alaska. And this is so I go from Florida to Alaska, which is kind of a change. On the way, we went through Denver, and they were laid over there for 6 hours for some reason. But anyway, mine was at school there. So we got together right there and had a chance to have a little necking, good time together. And she picked a rose or something and put it up over my ear. And then I had to take off and get on the train. And after a while, one of the guys says, when are you going to take that damn flower off of your ear? So that was, then we wound up in Anchorage, and we were, from Anchorage we went to I can't remember the name of the island right now, but it was the halfway up the chain, and that's where all the headquarters of everything was. See, the chain's almost 1,500 miles long. And they took us in there, and they didn't have a place to put us, so they put us out in a tent. And they loaded us in the back of a coal truck and drove out there, and the mud was just a little over a foot deep. And they put us in that tent. And that night, the wind was blowing. We didn't know the wind blew out there, but we found out about it. And the flaps on where you go into the tent were supposed to be hooked together. Well, the hooks had all gotten broke out, and we were all sleeping on those bunks, you know, just one on each bunk. And that flap on there was swinging back and forth in the mud, and in the morning we were all the same color. That mud was spread all over us, and we had to waller through the mud till we could get back to one of the buildings where they had a bathroom and a bedroom, or a bathroom and a sink, to try to get cleaned up before we could get some breakfast. Then they took us off from there and took us up to I wished I had a map here, because those island names are gone right now. But the one that we then were landed on was the one that later on, after the war, that the United States and Canada used to check on, they drilled holes down, I don't know how far down, but then they dropped atomic bombs down in there and tried and set them off. And this is go way after the war. But that was a good runway there. All those runways out there, every one of them was different. And that runway was one that ran east and west. And it was a real good one. I think that was the first Christmas I was there. And we had saved up all the booze that we could. He only brought in a 6-pack of beer for each one of us a week. So, and the whole shipload of it went down in the harbor there. So that was a sad day. But for Christmas, we all got together and had our beer and that sort of thing. And the fellow and I had, we were in a, some kind of a tent arrangement with a real insulated sides and top on it, and it was half round. And we had to get across one of the taxiways to get out there. And the wind was blowing, and it probably somewhere between 40 and 50 miles an hour when we were going to go out there. We couldn't get across the taxi strip. Finally had to get down on our hands and knees and crawl across. And then when we got across that, then we got over and got into our little bunkie house. And one night, something woke me up, and I kind of came to, and it was my foot locker. It was bumping the edge of my bunk there. The weather kind of turned warm. Water was running everywhere, especially inside. But that runway was one that I checked another crew out on quite a while later, because it was such a good runway.
Were those mat runways, Ralph?
Yeah. The one on that too, I did have a blowout tire on one of them when I came in for a landing, because there was a piece of that steel came up toward the side out of the tire. And boy, I got that thing stopped as good as I could. And here come the fellow that was in charge, and that was the Navy man, because this was a Navy field. He was giving me hell for leaving that airplane in the middle of the runway. And my major came out and told him off. We got trouble enough trying to keep airplanes in here, because we were losing airplanes. And it wasn't altogether from damage by the Japanese, it was the weather. Weather was terrible. You can't believe it until you've been there.
Did you fly missions from the Aleutians and out through the Pacific, or?
Yes, we flew from Attu clear over to the Northern Kuriles. And that was the northern islands that belonged to the Japanese. That's where we bombed over there. And of course, on the way, if we found a ship or two, it didn't make any difference. We got rid of our bombs, but we had, in order to keep those things, we had to be up at least 9 hours to make that trip over there and back. And so we had to have half of the Bombay was full of gasoline, and we could only carry 400 or 500 pounders. But when a tracer goes through that tank, that's it.
Did you keep the same crew pretty much the whole time?
Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, there were 7 of us.
So you know each other and know how the other guy's going to react?
Yeah. He had a pilot and co-pilot, and we trade off on those.
How big was the crew? Like 5 people or
7.
7 people in a crew?
Pilot, co-pilot, and then we had a navigator, bombardier. Then we had a fella that took care of the top turret, and then we had to have a radio operator, and then there was another one back there with him for fighting using the sight guns, and then he had a tail gunner. So it was one of the most, he had more guns on it than anybody else for a long time.
But the later one you had, you could control from the pilot seat.
Yes, and that was a different setup, partner altogether though. The front end, they had taken the greenhouse off the front end and made it solid, and there was 850s in that. And then there was 250s on each side of the fuselage, and then there was 250s in the upper turret, and you could lock that into with the others. And well, we cut a boat in 2 with it at one time.
How long were you in the Aleutians then, the rest of the...
15 months.
Been back to Alaska since then?
No, I haven't. I spent 2 Christmases up there. Time I stood in the Army over there, and of course they told us we were overseas. But when you get back to Anchorage, they had sugar there. And sugar was out of business down here. And I tried to make candy one time. One of the worst ones we had, had to learn how to, what they called making a real fast landing so that you weren't going too slow when you came in, because that's when the Japanese would hit you, and you didn't have as much maneuvering as you knew when you got speed up. Well, the major went in ahead of us, and I was riding co-pilot. Well, they'd taken us to a different island and got a different plane, not the one we usually float. And it happened to be the major's outfit from that other bunch. And it was the one with a 75mm cannon in it. And so he decided he didn't need a co-pilot. So he'd taken the seat out. Well, I was riding co-pilot that day, sitting on a box. So this is fun. So we get up there to make this landing. And the fella that was flying, I kept hollering at him in my ear, you're going in too sharp, you're going in too sharp. Well, he just kept right on coming in, and then I started hollering at the major, get the hell out of the way, we're gonna hit you. Well, we did hit him, but with a half Bombay full of gasoline, I was busy for a real while, turning off all the switches I could find. And only thing I thought about later, I should have pulled the wheels up. But anyway, when we went by him, we cut off the vertical rudders, and he had his feet, of course, on the rudder pedal, and that really fixed him up for pretty good. And then when we went off the end of the runway, we had to be going about 80 miles an hour when we hit the end of the runway. And it even bent the barrel on that gun. And here I am sitting on a box. And I knew we were going to get it. So I was smart enough to get my head and my arm up on the dash. But this hand was flying around in there. It went through the instruments. It took me 5 years to get all the glass out. Anyway, that kind of tore that airplane up. And the next day, here come a C-47. That's the ones that's the old DC-3. And they're the ones that hauled everything around. So he comes in, and the plane that we were in, the two things that weren't hurt were the vertical rudders, and the other thing was the top turret. Well, there's two guys in there taking these parts off, and we're going to have them for the major, for one reason, to replace his rudders. And this guy in the C-47 didn't get stopped. And he went right over the top of that airplane and tore all that up. So the other thing that we had that day was the fact that we had the mail. And boy, when that gasoline was running out of there, these guys were fighting like crazy trying to get the mail out of there. And our radio operator, he had to go out to an escape hatch on the side, and when he went out, his belt got hooked on on a catch at the top where you opened it. And then there was another guy in the back end that he'd just gone along for a ride. Well, he pulled his pocket knife out and cut his belt for him and dropped him in all that gasoline.
When was your discharge from the military then? Was it soon after the 15 months in the Aleutians, or?
No, I was then, we got home and we got some time off, and then we were down in Southern California, and they called it R&R, Rest and Recuperation in Blanche. And I had got married on the 12th of February.
What year was that?
1840. What year was it? 45?
45.
Yeah. We've been married 63 years. Now subtract.
Yeah. Should be about right.
And that was the time that Blanche and two of her buddies, and all three weddings were in the same week. And we were the middle one. And 50 years after that, all three of us were all still married to the same brides, and we all went to Hawaii together to celebrate.
The weddings took place here in Jerome then?
Two of them and one in Boise. But 50 years later, we were still together. And any time we said that to a group where we were, can't be. They don't do things like that anymore.
That's good. Is there anything else you'd like to add to your story, or things that?
Only thing I can think about is the fact that the rest of the things you can't talk about, because not only that, but the pressure that you're under all the time. You are worrying all the time what's going to happen to you that day. It was just the pressure that you never get over, plus all the other things that are mixed in on that. It happens. The only thing I can think of is a thing that would bother me worse than anything else is to think that I've been a killer, that I've killed people. And that's one thing that just hangs on with me all the time. I know I will never get over it. So that's the reason I kind of come apart every once in a while.
Well, that's understandable. You remember how many missions you flew?
I only flew 13 missions. But what would happen up there, it would be, sometimes it would be as much as 6 weeks before an airplane ever took off, because the weather's so bad up there. It's terrible. The anemometer blew away twice, and that blows away at somewhere between 120 and 140 miles an hour. So you want to talk about these cyclones and things that go on down here in the States. I've been through all of them.
And it wasn't nearly as warm.
Yeah, and then there was we didn't have any plumbing or anything like that. It was strictly, you had a place to sleep, and that was about it. So the outhouse was a 3-holder, and of course in the wintertime, when that ice got all the way around that hole, it was kind of hard sitting there. You got through there in a hurry. And after I left there, and the next guy that took over, he'd only been there a week, I guess, the new major. And he was out there trying out that outhouse, and it blew off down the hill. Busted him up, and he got to go back to Seattle.
Were all the planes kept inside, or were they out?
All no, out in the open.
What rank were you at this point?
First lieutenant. No, and I saw at one time the runway, the short runway that we were on to start with, was only 3,500 feet long. This runway out here is longer than that was. But the waves were so high, that runway was 35 feet off the water, and the waves were breaking over the airplanes.
That was when you were going out with a full load?
No, I'm talking about a parked airplane.
Oh, a parked
Airplane.
Gee.
And as I say, the waves were breaking higher than the airplane. Part of the wave was coming over onto the airplane.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been very interesting. And we really appreciate that you would do this for us.